Fab. Okay, so this session is all about how we can use play in the older years of primary and into the early years of secondary. We work on stage rather than age, so of course these can be applicable to older and younger children depending on their stage of development. As always, with everything we do, please do share any questions you have, any thoughts you have in the comments section in our chat, so that we can, make sure that you get everything answered before you leave. And of course, if you have any kind of thoughts or, ideas that come to mind, share those as well, because then everyone else can can bounce off of those ideas as we go. And I will always send out a bit of a feedback form or a bit of a feedback sheet after every training I deliver. That is absolutely so that we can be delivering the best possible training in all areas. So I appreciate you, and I thank you ahead of time for sending that back to me, because it always helps us in terms of making sure that we maximise our support in the areas that we are delivering training in. So let's delve straight in. I'm Samantha Delarkia. I'm the founder of SPD Tuition and Coaching. I used to be a deputy head teacher, then I went into teacher training. I now run the Behaviour Bank and the Behaviour Balance System, an alternative approach to managing and supporting behaviour. And this session is all linked to the wider approach. We're going to start with where you are currently, because one of the biggest barriers to using play in the older years tends to be around behaviour. So we're going to start with where you are now. We're then going to move on to thinking about the science behind why play is so important and the impact it has, not only on the children directly, but your classroom community. We're then going to move into what play is for older children, because sometimes we're not really sure what to do with them as they get that bit bigger. And then we're going to get into our own thoughts. We're going to plan it out. We're going to think about what you're going to be putting in place for your learners in your classrooms. So as with everything that we do here within the Behaviour Bank and within the Behaviour Balance System, we have three core approaches. We have physiology, which always comes first. We have our beliefs about something, a scenario, about ourselves, about another human, whatever it is. And then we have our language. And this is how we structure and communicate to the world our thoughts, and of course, how we identify what's going on within ourselves. So when we think about these three stepping stones, these can be absolutely used in any area of life when it comes to being successful, when it comes to having success. So this is the foundations, if you like, of our program and all that we do. And we're going to be dipping our toes in a little bit today, so that we can explore what that looks like, and so that we can really kind of delve into how you can use that to support the children that we're working with. We're going to be using our framework of the art of progressive practice. Now, this is all about building your awareness today, getting you reflecting a little bit on your current practice. And then, of course, if we work with you and you continue on this journey, or if you continue on this journey even without us, you can then start to make that transformation in terms of your classroom practice and how you approach play with the young people that you are working with. So it all starts with you. We're going to have a think about what you are currently thinking when it comes to play. Now, this is one of the trickier elements, because of course our beliefs have a huge part in what we put into practice. So I wanted to kind of get you to think about what it is that you think when it comes to play. And full disclosure, when I was in, year 5, year 6, working with those older ones, sometimes I didn't want to let them loose on a play-based activity. I might have got a little bit scared or a little bit concerned that their behavior would go a little bit off the wall, and I wouldn't be able to rein them back in. Sometimes I'd wonder how relevant it was, or whether or not, the children were going to be able to get involved and, collaborate. Sometimes, that thought that actually our children might not be able to work together on something. So we all have been there at some point or another where we've just not been sure what that looks like and how we're going to bring them back. So what does play mean to you? Just have a think for a second. When you think about play, do you think older children? Do you think younger children? Do you think particular activities? Just jot it down. You might want to kind of share it in the chat. What does play mean to you when you think about play? Younger children. Okay, up to yeah, absolutely, up to like lower key stage two. So we kind of think it stops at like year four, right? We and then that's it. All the play finishes. Absolutely. And one of the things that I always used to think about, it was like toy based. So I used to think that all play was around children and toys, and we had to have enough toys for every child. So there are a lot of things that crop up when we're thinking about play. And I wanted to just really challenge that thought that you might be having in today's session. So, for example, how often do you actively promote play in your classroom? Now, if I'm talking to you and you're in early years, you're going to be like, yeah, all the time, we play all the time, or key stage one. If I talk to educators in those earlier, as you were saying there, Tom, in those earlier years in key stage two, they're like, yeah, they get a bit of play, like we bring that in. You might even still have a role play area in those year groups. Only some classrooms that I go in still have those for those slightly older children. But by the time we get to year 5 and 6 and beyond, play tends to drop off. And it's very rare that I speak to, year 5, 6, 7, 8 teachers and they are actively promoting play. So just have a think, how often do you bring play into your lessons? And if you're thinking like never, that's okay. This is a judgment-free space. You might just be thinking, well, actually, we just don't play. We are all about the learning. And that's okay. We're going to kind of work on some of those beliefs, and we're going to see how you can bring it in if you choose to, following this. So one of the things that I want to just plant a seed of thought for you guys today is that play is actually a strategy for learning at any age. And I love this little quote here, because I think even as grown-ups like to play, we do. We have our playful moments. We might, be playing at life a little bit. Sometimes we get a little bit, a big injection of excitement or whatever what we're doing. Sometimes our work can feel like play as well. I know mine certainly does. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. So even the things that we feel are adulting, are doing things that we have to do, can sometimes feel fun. They can sometimes feel enjoyable as well, and that's what play really is. It's having that element of enjoyment. So why is that really important? Well, we know that when we are able to associate a really positive emotion or a really negative emotion with something, we remember it more freely. We are able to draw upon those memories far more quickly than just the day-to-day stuff that we do. So hopefully our children are not having such a terrible time in the classroom that they're drawing upon those negative associations, but we want them to have a great time so they can remember those really fun experiences that they had. And play plays a crucial role here. Not only does it enable them to remember things more freely, it also improves their cognitive ability, their physical development, that social interaction, emotional well-being, a whole host of things, not only for our younger children, but our younger people as they grow and develop. So we really are looking at ways that we can support them from a full 360 approach. For anyone that has worked with us in the past or been to any of the stuff that we provide, we are all about the 360 approach. And we want to see that as the children develop and as they grow. And really, a bit like, our houses need bricks and mortar, play is creating a robust foundation for learning. So when we think about our children, when we think about those older children, through play, they get to experience the world themselves in a safe environment. A bit like the younger ones, they're going to be constantly testing boundaries with each other. They're going to be seeing what they can do and how they can do it, and problem solving very naturally. And this provides an opportunity for them to do this. So as they develop, as their brain matures, play becomes that foundation that they can lean back on and just check in with. This could come in many forms, and we're going to, delve into this in more detail as we go through today. But it could be things that are more physical games. It could be puzzle-based games. It could be games that are, multifaceted in approach and in outcomes. We often talk about having open-ended questions, but open-ended play, it can be really, really supportive in our lessons as well. So when we think about our learning objectives, when we think about what we want our children to achieve, bringing in games or gamifying activities can be really useful for them in tapping into some of those wider skills at the same time. It also really supports things like resilience, perseverance, confidence, self-esteem, and all of those, of course, knock on to them in their studying, in their working, in their building of relationships. So it really does have such a wider impact when we use play. Now, before we start thinking about the different types of play in more detail, just a few things that we need to have in place in order to do this. And of course, these kind of combat some of those beliefs that we may have had at the beginning, or may still have, where we have to have clear boundaries. And they need to be, I've got two R's, together. This is a really important one, clearly. They need to be in place, agreed together, because if they're not, then they feel like rules that we are just putting on the children. And of course, our young people love to push those boundaries that little bit. So we want things that feel collaborative. We want them to work with us. Now, of course, if you're a member of the Behaviour Bank, you will have access to all of the support material in order to set up an environment like this. If you're not, there's a Scan Me there that you can kind of have a look over in our website for. But thinking about how we set that up is really important. Making sure that we've got that collaborative feel, making sure that we are not kind of leaning back into rewards and punishments and those sorts of traditional behavior management techniques is going to be really useful when it comes to bringing in play. Of course, we also want to make sure that we have got strategies to bring them back. They can get carried away, they can get focused in their activity, they can get very excited in what they're doing when it comes to play. So we want to have those really clear-cut instructions of how they're coming back round. We've again got some support material there for you, but just having the tools in your toolkit to make sure that you can bring them back round. And when I talk about this, what I'm really talking about is bringing the background in a way that feels part of the game or part of the fun of that session, rather than that whole idea of like, I'm still waiting, that's 5 minutes gone, those sorts of negative loops that we get into as teachers, and I have absolutely been there myself as well. So again, this is a space that we can all feel safe to share in. But in terms of making sure that they've got that, like when the bell rings, we're going to do this. When this happens, we're going to do this. I need you to. Having those go-to scripts, those go-to actions are going to be really helpful. One of the things that I recently put into the Behaviour Bank was having learning leaders. And this was a strategy that I used a lot with my older children. Having someone in the group when they're doing play-led activities that is almost manning that station for you as a grown-up. So it's like having lots of little teaching assistants in your room, because they guide the group with you. And there's some bite-sized videos and some downloadables to support that in the bank. In terms of play ideas, it's great to have a mixture of ideas. All children respond differently to different play, so it gives a nice opportunity for children to really shine. Some children are so imaginative, so creative, and that gives them an opportunity to really express themselves. Other children like games that are very, clear cut and have that element of fairness that rules their roost internally. So it's nice to have that mixture so that children can really identify their strengths as well as the things that other children in the group might be needing support with. So what is play for older children? And again, thinking back to our concepts before, of me previously being hung up on it being like toy based and, having lots of high energy games and things like that, it really is a mixture of things. It's something that can spark creative thinking. It's an opportunity for developing their understanding of the world, both academically, socially, and emotionally. It really is about impulse control, so you can play games where this is part of the game. And of course, it supports emotional regulation because we have to practice this in order to make progress in it. If children are, all about the winning of games, then they're going to practice quite quickly that they're also opportunities for learning. And I always say to the children I work with and the teachers, I mean, a lot of the teachers I work with are very competitive too, is that we're either winning or we're learning. So when we think about this, when we think about the range of different games, we want to take these into consideration. Is what are the lessons that they're going to be taught within the lesson that we're teaching at the time. Again, just thinking about kind of the ability to grow. Empathy is such an important part of playing games, and of course strengthening relationships not only with us as practitioners but also with our peers. So let's delve into some ideas then that you can put into practice with your young people. Now, I've used all of these and probably a range more as well over the years, but these are some of my favorites, some of my go-tos, and I used to try and plan these in across the week so that I would have lessons dotted around. And of course, not every lesson can be completely play-led, but there is always an element of your lesson that can lend itself to a playful moment or a playful experience in terms, whether it's, doing something with their partners, doing a bit of group work, whatever that is. There was a lot of studies or a lot of research into this, led by Bob Hughes. He was he did a lot of work in the play world. He was a play worker, and he talked about there being 16 types of play to consider. He talked about there being creative play, deep play, dramatic play, explorative play, and these all cover the things that he spoke about. The idea that when we get children to master things within play, they can practice it in a safe space and then take it outside of their play into the real world. So getting children to act things out is all part of play in Key Stage 2. And it might be that you're looking at the list now and you're thinking, oh, maybe we do a bit of play in the classroom, actually. Maybe some of these things are counting, in the play area. But they absolutely are. Getting children to draw things out, getting them to make it. Some of my favorite lessons that I taught with some of my older children were where they got to investigate something freely, turn it into something. So it might be a research-led activity, but they got to build something from it or model it to each other in a different way. This is all play-based learning, as well as the games that you can introduce. So these are more structured, I guess, more collaborative, more problem-solving activities that you can put into place using different things. So one of the ideas that you could put into practice straight away is turning something into a puzzle. I used to give out sheets that I'd blow up onto A3. I'd cut them out into different shapes, put them on the table, get my children to work in small groups, put those pieces of the puzzle back together, and then problem solve the activity. So you've built in an element of play to something that really doesn't take a lot of time, but also allows you the space for the children to, to move about, to talk about it, to have that creativity element. So just thinking about a few of these, jot down maybe one or two ideas that you could put into practice in the next couple of days in some lessons that you've already planned. What would these ideas lend themselves to? Maybe you've got a maths activity and you're thinking, oh, actually, rather than just, them filling out the sheet, maybe they could make it using Lego. Maybe they could make it using a different manipulative. Maybe they could explain it in a story. Maybe they could wrap it to each other. You know, getting them to think about how they can share it. And in fact, in the bank, we've got some cards that you can use. You can download and print off. You can just pop them on the table, and children can select how they want to represent their work. So if you're giving out a maths or a literacy activity and you want to take back their feedback, you know, take in their ideas, they can select how they share it with you, whether they want to draw it out, whether they want to do it on a whiteboard, etc. So again, just having that play-based element to a lesson that you have already planned. So thinking about how you can bring play in again with different resources. One of my favorite resources, I have to admit, is a simple envelope. And I use this with all ages and stages, cutting up your worksheets, cutting up your activities and putting them in an envelope, getting children to sort them, getting children to answer them a problem at a time is really, really useful when it comes to engaging those older children. It gives them that element of movement, an element of empowerment throughout that session. You can always add a timer. Lots of my older children, my older learners, loved working to a timer. They loved that competitive element. And sometimes I would even give out personal timers so that they can time themselves, gamifying it for themselves. One of the best elements of competition is to compete with our last best version, or our personal best. So when we can give that to our children in our lessons, it means that they are constantly wanting to improve. This not only supports the gamifying of the lesson, but it also builds intrinsic motivation. It removes that idea that we have to give out rewards, dojos, stickers, you know, whatever it is, whatever the reward that you like is, and they get that reward of being able to beat their last go. So you can do this for individuals, or you can do this as small groups. I'm a huge fan of small groups in our classrooms. I think when children are talking about it, when they're explaining it to each other, when they're doing it as a collaborative effort, you know, I think that they come away with so much more. We also use a lot of post-it notes. I know this is not the most eco-friendly approach, so hands up for that. I'm sorry if you're thinking, oh no, not post-it notes. But if you don't want to use post-it notes, what you can do is you can print off a set and you can laminate. You can get the printable ones that you cut out. Again, we've got those in the bank ready to download. You can laminate them and then you can write on them. But we used to play hide and learn, so I would hide post-it notes around the room, and the children would find the questions, they would answer them and then hide them for the next person. Again, it depends on your environment, it depends on your space. If you have them laminated, you can take it outdoors, and we did a lot of games outside as well, on the playground, where we would put things around and the children would have to go and find them, and they would bring them back and work on it on big paper or in, on the whiteboards, which brings us over to whiteboards themselves. There is lots and lots that you can do on a whiteboard, whether it is getting children to draw out grids and kind of work through it together on the carpet, whether it is at the tables. There's a whole host of different ways you can use whiteboards to bring your lessons into that game-driven environment. The final one that I was going to share on here, although, you know, there's Lego as well, and then I never know what these are called actually. If you know what these are called, these little I feel like they're called Lexi or Lexus pockets or something like that. I might not be right, so I'm not sure 100% what they're called, but they are a firm favorite because you can put inside any sheets that you're using. You can use any kind of worksheets and get them to write on them and then wipe them off. Again, they can, you know, turn that into a game rather than it just being, you know, death by worksheets, which, you know, can also drive us a bit mad at the same time. And then we've got the dice and the Lego. a really lovely, in fact, I was in one of our TBBS schools really recently. A really lovely activity that they were doing was learning about parameters and learning about space and area and things like that. And they were using Lego to do that. And it was such a wonderful lesson. It really was. All the children absolutely loved it. They were all on task. There was the odd child kind of wanting to build their own tower. But other than that, I mean, providing they could work out the area and all that jazz and the perimeter of their tower, I feel like they were still winning. But it was such a nice lesson to watch. It really was. And then, of course, the dice. You cannot go wrong with a set of dice. That brings that game element to most activities that you are doing. And again, it is something that we tend to forget. The older ones enjoy it as well. They all love a game. They really do, especially when they feel like they're not learning. And yes, they are all at the same time. So it's a win-win for all of us. We want to use these things to increase engagement. So here are just a couple of my favorite ways to engage children in our lessons, and to really kind of gamify some of the things that I have taught over the years. And again, these can be applied across the curriculum, which is awesome. It means that it's not something that has to be printed out and redone. Again, you can laminate them, cut them out, and just have them there and use them as you will. So dominoes for me were such a win, and children really do like the idea that they are doing it with a pal, with a friend. So something that you can use dominoes for is, we can use it in our maths, but we can also use it in problem solving. We can use it in, if we were teaching a topic in history, and we wanted to match dates with things. It really is just a matching activity, isn't it? But it's dressed up as a game that all children, well, I say all children, maybe not all children, a lot of children will have come into contact with. And if they haven't, then this is the opportunity for them to learn a new game. So just have a think, going back through some of these ideas here, and, as we go forward, what would you be able to put in place, again, with some of the lessons that you're about to teach this week or these coming weeks? Where would you be able to bring these in? Now, this can, with the dominoes, just because we're on that slide, I used to print them out onto A3, so I'd have really large dominoes, but I'd also have smaller ones. And that's because sometimes I'd want children to do larger group work, and of course the small dominoes didn't always lend themselves to it. But you can print these out and just, make them whatever size that you want them to be. And again, print them out, laminate them, and play around with them. I used to stick like Post-it notes again, the Post-it notes on them, but you can also draw on them with your whiteboard pens. I'm starting to realize, guys, that maybe I was not the most environmentally conscious with these games. So we'll scrap the Post-it notes as a immediate go-to, but you've got the gist of it, I'm sure. And just have a think, how are you going to put these into your lessons? How would these work for you? And which children do you think would love this? Because there's always that one child or a few children that come to mind when you're thinking about these sorts of things. And you're like, that child would love it. They would be so up for this. So just pop down, make a note of a lesson that you could include this to, or and how you might include it. Would it be as a starter? Would it be as a bringing everything to a close? How could you use it? Okay. And of course, you can, come back round to these ideas when you're planning your lessons for the following weeks, and just think, okay, how am I going to gamify this? How can I make this play-led and engage my children even more? So the next one, as I mentioned, for vocab, nice as a plenary. Yeah, love that. Absolutely. Absolutely. So in terms of another nice activity that you can lean into when you want to bring a bit of fun into your lessons is name 3 and 3. So you can do this as a whole group, you can do this as individuals, you can do this as small groups. But the idea here is that, and again, thinking about it, bringing things to a close as a plenary, it might be really nice. It might be great as a recap of your previous lesson. It might be great as an aspect within your lesson if you wanted to maybe even set up carousels and things like that. Again, things like that work really well with those older children because they know how to do it really easily. They've done it before, if you're in that environment in your school. But if you're not, and you're trailblazing, please do blaze away. Then just get those routines in place, and remember that children of all ages always need to practice routines. And if you're thinking, oh my goodness, yeah, how do I reteach those routines? Head over to the bank, because we've got a whole section on how you can teach routines and reteach routines, because they always need to be retaught. So yeah, thinking about how you can bring in 3 and 3, a really nice activity. Can they remember 3 of something? Can they put together 3 of something? You can put this with one of the other activities, so you can get them to rap it in 3, you can get them to sing it in 3, you can get them to role play it in 3, whatever it is, but just bringing that that sense of fun to that lesson. And then finally, from my 3 and 3 that I'm giving you now, is the catch the question and pass the thought. I love using balls in the classroom, and I think you have to have an element of trust, because yes, there are always times where children just really want to throw it as hard as they can. But if you are offering kind of our TBBS approach, if you have already got the balance baskets and things like that up and running in your classroom, this should not technically, she said should not, be an issue. There will always be times where it is, but generally speaking, children love this. The idea that they are moving, and as you saw at the beginning, physiology first, movement is such a core part of our being. If we can bring movement into our lessons, and I'm not talking about random, wake and shakes and things like that. Yes, they have their place, but what I'm talking about is bringing movement into the lesson itself. Are you teaching through elements of movement? And this is a gorgeous way to bring that into play. So you can do this as a whole class. You can go out into the playground and do it. You can do it, on the carpet. You can get children to just throw it between the tables, which is what I used to do because I had a rather small room in my year 5 class. But just getting them to throw it, ask a question, catch it, share a thought. And what the idea behind this is that children get to recap thoughts that they've had in the lesson. They get to question things they weren't sure of. They get to answer your questions if you want to get involved yourself. And it's just a really nice way to get them all participating in a friendly feel, in that friendly feeling, where it's not cold calling. It's not, you have to know the answer, because they can either ask a question or answer a question or share a thought. So it gives that, that positive out, which we talk a lot about in the behaviour balance system, in terms of approach to curriculum. But it just gives them a way to express themselves within that lesson, and it gives you a nice opportunity to gauge where they are. If they caught it but they didn't answer the question and they shared a thought, or they've asked a question in return, where they are. They didn't know the answer, potentially. You can pick them up afterwards. So play is a safe way to practice life skills and to push boundaries. And it really is such a useful tool that we can have in the teaching toolkit. I'm blurring my words, muddling them up there. Just as you're moving forwards with them. Unfortunately, we don't have enough play in the curriculum. We don't include play as often as we like. So it really is about how you can bring it in, how you can support your class in play with the curriculum that you are teaching, with the lessons that you are planning. So I'm just going to ask you to pause for thought. What was new? What was interesting? What questions do you have? just pause for thought. If you're watching this on catch up, you can, get involved as well. Share anything through, if you're watching this on the bank, share anything through your email with the coaches, because they will respond to you, which is what we want, isn't it, guys? We want a response. And if you are wanting to, then you can share your thoughts in the chat. Okay. Now, you can do this with me. You can have a stretch with me now, okay, if you need to. But one of the ideas here is getting children to move in their seats. Now, we are huge advocates of flexible seating. And if you don't know what flexible seating is, then let me tell you, it is children being able to sit in ways that feel comfortable for them. None of these are not flexible seating setups, by the way. We don't want children learning like this. This is part of the movement strategy that you can put in place in your lessons. But it got me thinking about flexible seating, so I thought I'd share. So thinking about flexible seating is getting children to sit comfortably in their lessons so that they can focus on you rather than, how they're sat. And as I said before, movement is really important. Getting children to stretch at the tables, stretch at the chairs is another way that you can bring movement into your classroom. If you can see that behavior is bubbling, if you can see that children are getting a bit fidgety, have been sitting for a little bit too long, you can also get them to stand up and stretch, or do an activity with you. Some children will need more sensory input than others. If you want more on this, we do have lots of trainings available for this, because it's such a crucial part of our behavior system or support system. But just to kind of shine a little bit of light on bringing movement into the classroom here, really. So as we come towards the end of today's session, I wanted to just think about how we can bring in play on a daily basis, why we are going to do it a little bit like drip fed, if you like, a little bit at a time rather than going all in. But just to reinforce the importance of play, really what we want to do is enable some risk taking within our classrooms, and play absolutely supports that. It supports our children leading the way. It really supports, as I said before, that emotional regulation. And again, it goes all the way through, as Mardale says, all the way through to college. We should be able to play at all ages. Now, there is an old saying that knowledge is power, but I don't believe it, because you can know everything in the world, do nothing with it, and you are none the wiser. So knowledge is only power when it is applied. So really it's the application that is the power. So let's have a look at what application looks like. Now, as with everything within TBBS, our approach to learning and our approach to behaviour, we have a phased introduction. And this can be done with play. If you are going all in and you're like, yes, we're gonna play our hearts out, this is happening in my classroom, we are all getting involved. You might not want to have play in every lesson, all in, the whole lesson might not want to be play. So these are just some steps that you can take to support your children in getting used to play. Because if you're teaching year 5, 6, 7, 8, the chances are they haven't played for a long time other than, outside or on the console. So we want to make sure that play is built up. Again, we want to make sure that we have clear boundaries around what's expected for them and for us and for our classroom community. We want to make sure that children understand why we are using play as well. We want them to have fun, but we also want them to be able to engage with each other and share and have a shared experience of learning. So, for example, we want to start off with investigation and exploration. Now, this means that when you bring play-based learning in, a nice activity would lend itself to that. Can they explore something together collaboratively and share it in a particular way? This is a great starting point, a great first step into play if you haven't played for a long time in your classroom. Again, we're going to need trial and error. Some games are going to work really well, and others you're going to be like, we're never doing that again. And that's okay, because we have to work out what works. Every cohort, every year group, every class is different. Some of my classes over the years have been like, toot toot, let's play, and some have been like, we are not doing that. So you've got to trial it, error it out, and just iron it together. Work out what games your children like, and it might even be that you have some children that love more physical, hands-on games, and some children that like more, fine motor skill. It might be that you split your class, and some of them are going to demo it in this way and some of them are going to do it in this way. I used to ask children to sort themselves on a regular basis. So I used to do it in colors, but you can do it in whatever you wanted. I used to have a red wall, a blue wall, and I think it was a yellow wall, or it might have been green. But basically I would have different activities that those children chose. So I would set up the learning objective, I do my input, and I would say, right, this is the activity. You can either go to red wall and you could create something creative. It might be a song, a rap, or whatever. If you're going to blue wall, I want to see you do it with some of the manipulatives. I want to see you build it out. And if you're on the other wall, I can't remember what I used to put on there, but it was something else. It might have been something where they would I think it was like things like investigative work, so envelopes or post-it notes, them demoing it like that. So the idea was that they would sort themselves, and then once they decided what they wanted to be and how they wanted to show it, they could show it in their own way. Again, it just depends on the amount of space you have for that, because you might want to do it just on the board and say, look, these are the 3 options, vote what one you want to do, and then go for it. Association, as I said, we want children to associate this with a positive experience. So getting children to get involved, share their feedback, talk to you about what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy is really powerful. It means that they're going to be able to get more from the experience. And of course, we want to get encouragement and practice, because practice makes progress. And eventually, the aim of the game is that they can play. It's more independent. It's more child-led and focused on their strengths. Not that we want to, not develop any weaker areas within their abilities, but we want them to feel empowered while we do that. So this is where play really comes in. Now, I hope that this has been really useful. I hope that you've got lots that you can kind of take away, put into place. And I just want you to kind of think, what is in your little takeaway bag from today's session? I know it's been a real whistle-stop tour of play. And of course, this is one of the areas that we could literally talk to for days about. And, I would if I could. But if you're thinking about some key takeaways, jot them into the chat if you want to, jot them down on a notepad. What are you taking away? What's the most kind of, I guess, the most vibrant thought that you're leaving with? And then once we've done that, we're going to go into our plan, and we're going to plan ahead. So what is in your takeaway bag, my friends? What are you going to be putting out to the children this week, seeing what their thoughts are? Matching games and but mainly boundaries. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And matching games are so powerful, aren't they? How children respond to different learnings through matching is really important. Fab. Okay. So I'm just going to give you some time now to plan ahead. What is the first thing you're going to do when you get into your classroom or when you get into your next lesson? Maybe it might be that you want to go and get some resources. Maybe it might be that you want to redefine a particular lesson or add to it. It might be that you want to rejig something, take an activity that you've already got and be like, right, okay, actually I'm gonna use envelopes for that, or I'm going to get them to build it out. I'm going to get them to share that with me in a creative way. I'm going to get the children to match it up. What do you need to do? What do you need to have? What do you need to put together? And how do you need to show up in that lesson? You know, do you need to feel more confident as you set them off on this games-led task? You know, do you need to focus on noise level? You know, is that something that is triggering for you? I know that lots of staff and lots of teachers that I work with in our schools and our settings find that when children's volume gets so high, they start to feel out of control, which means that all of a sudden they kind of clamp down. So it might be that you print off one of our voiceometers or our noisometers and use that with the children and be like, right, okay, this is where we're at. This is where we don't want to be. Let's work on that together. It might be that you have a couple of other children in your class that feel the same, and you bring in some ear defenders, or you source some ear defenders if you have some in your school and just have them available. Some of you might already have those available in your balance zones, where you have your baskets. If you're not, if you're wondering what a balance zone is, it is an area that we promote in schools for supporting emotional regulation and teaching children how to self-regulate through a range of different techniques and activities that are available in their baskets. If you are wondering how to set that up, then head over, because we've got all of that in the bank, and we also do deliver training in that as well. Okay. I hope you have got a plan. If you haven't finished planning and you're like, no, wait, then press pause if you're watching on catch up. If you're with me live doing this, then apologies, you can't press pause on me. But I hope you've got a plan in place. Just to kind of shed a little bit of light on our wider system, for those of you that are interested. We have created something called the behaviour balance system. This is not only an approach to behaviour, but it's an approach to learning and creating an environment that supports our children in the best possible way. It's trauma informed, it is neuroaffirming, it's all about celebrations rather than rewards. It's looking at how we support our young people. We use restorative practices within our approach as well. We teach children the skills behind behavior and the skills behind emotional regulation as part of it, because we absolutely believe that children cannot just respond to an expectation without it being taught. So this is our wider approach. If you are interested and you haven't heard of it or come across it before, then this is kind of what it's all about. And we do come into schools, we do whole school trainings. We do a whole host of twilight trainings and things like that with a range of schools across the country. In fact, we're also working globally at the moment, which is exciting. So this is our wider approach. And then, of course, we have our behaviour bank, which is the only online portal in the world to have a 360 approach to behaviour. And what that means is we have the option for parents and practitioners to both get ongoing CPD around supporting behaviour and learning and children's development. We have a whole host of different experts within the bank. So we have a wide range from a SENCO, a speech and language therapist, all the way through to nutritionalists and sleep coaches, as well as psychotherapists and all sorts of people in there. Everything that we do informs behaviour, and behaviour informs everything that we can do in school with our young people. So it's such a huge barrier to learning that we are trying to overcome. So if you are interested and you are not already a bank member, then open yourself the best account in the world. Grab yourself an account. I think it's less than Netflix a month. I think that's still the case. And we also have got the lovely playful learning games offering 20% off of all of her downloadables. And these range from ages 6 to 11-year-olds, a wide range of different activities that you can print off from her website with our TBB discount, if you remember. And this covers all of the teaching standards across literacy, maths, and I'm pretty sure she's got others in there as well. She's absolutely fantastic. I can't recommend her enough. So if you are thinking about printing games off or putting things in place, then cash in with your 20% discount over there. If you are a bank member, then you are winning on all fronts. And if you are thinking, yes, what do you get in there? You get monthly live workshops just like this, where you can come along and talk to us about different areas within learning, behaviour, emotional regulation, all sorts of things. We also have our experts from the bank deliver in here as well. We have a whole host. We have hundreds and hundreds of short courses which are less than 10 minutes. You can watch them as different strategies and techniques and activities, bite-sized videos, downloadable resources, handbooks, and a range of guidance that you can put into place. It's just a plug and play, a one-stop shop for teachers and parents alike. So it really helps us reach those parents that we can't reach when it comes to supporting behaviour from that 360 approach. So if you're interested, then get in touch. And outside of the bank, we come in and we deliver training and workshops to educators all over the country. And we cover a whole host of different topics, from reading, writing, maths to behaviour itself. So a wide range of services that we offer there. So if you are not already, then follow us, get in touch with us, and let us know how we can help you. I hope this has been useful. Do let us know in the chat or via email or what have you if there is anything else we can do to help you. And I am going to come off of record now, answer any questions that you have, and thank you so much for joining me today.